two American soldiers created special Easter eggs for Adolf Hitler, symbolizing disdain and resistance against Nazism. They personalized bombs with mocking messages, expressing hope and victory. This action reflected the sentiment of defiance and the imminent end of World War II in Europe. This symbolic gesture, full of irony, marked the approach of Nazi Germany's defeat, highlighting the creativity and spirit of the soldiers involved in the fight for freedom. In 1945, a Soviet soldier was photographed holding the head of a statue of Adolf Hitler in Berlin, Germany. This moment captured the symbolism of the Allies' victory over Nazi Germany, marking the end of World War II in Europe. The image represents the downfall of Hitler's regime and the triumph of the Soviet Union and the Allies. The destruction of symbols of Nazism symbolized the defeat of totalitarianism and the hope for a future of peace. Allied soldiers performed a symbolic act of contempt against Adolf Hitler by mocking him on his own balcony at the Reich Chancellery in Berlin, Germany. This gesture underscored the collapse of the regime that had spread terror throughout Europe. The capture of the Chancellery was a pivotal moment, symbolizing the end of World War II in Europe and the total defeat of Nazism, heralding liberation and the beginning of a new era of reconstruction and peace. In February 1945, the Yalta Conference brought together Allied leaders, Roosevelt, USA, Churchill, UK, and Stalin, Soviet Union, in Crimea to plan for post-war Europe. They discussed the reorganization of the continent following the defeat of Nazi Germany, including the division of Germany and the formation of the UN. Heinrich Himmler, one of the key Nazi leaders and architect of the Holocaust, facing off with a prisoner in an intense stare-down, symbolizes human resistance in the face of oppression. While there isn't a specific date for this encounter, the image evokes the challenge of subjugated individuals against their oppressors. Adolf Hitler declared war on the United States on December 11, 1941, days after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. This act significantly expanded the conflict of World War II, further uniting the Allies against the Axis powers. Hitler's declaration fulfilled the alliance pact with Japan and marked the beginning of direct U.S. involvement in the European War. This moment was crucial as it mobilized American resources on an unprecedented scale, influencing the course of the war and eventually leading to the defeat of the Axis powers. Erwin Rommel, known as the Desert Fox, was one of the most celebrated German commanders during World War II. Rommel earned respect from both his enemies and his countrymen for his honor in combat, innovative strategies, and leadership. In October 1944, he was involved in a failed plot to assassinate Hitler due to his disagreement with the ideals of Nazism. He is remembered for his exceptional military skill and for maintaining his integrity in times of war. The image known as the Death Grip captures a crucial moment of D-Day on June 6, 1944, when Allied forces landed on the beaches of Normandy, France, marking the beginning of Operation Overlord. This operation was the largest amphibious invasion in history and a turning point in World War II, initiating the liberation of Western Europe from Nazi control. In 1945, with the arrival of Allied forces, Polish prisoners at the Dachau concentration camp in Germany celebrated their liberation. The Poles were the largest ethnic group in the camp, including a significant number in the priests' barracks, where clergy were detained for resisting the Nazi regime. The liberation of Dachau was a poignant moment, symbolizing the end of Nazi terror and freedom for thousands of survivors. On May 14, 1941, during World War II, the Luftwaffe, German Air Force, gathered around a Messerschmitt Bf 110 at the Tatoy airfield in Athens. This aircraft, bearing Iraqi markings and the distinctive shark mouth painted on its nose, was en route to Mosul, passing through French Syria. The moment captures a stop in the 36-hour ferry journey, illustrating military cooperation between Iraq and Germany. The Battle of Kursk, which took place between July and August 1943, is one of the most notable battles of World War II, known as the largest tank battle in history. In this confrontation, an impressive moment was captured in a photograph. A Russian soldier waits motionless in the trench as an imposing T-34 tank, symbolizing the Soviet armored force, passes over him. The T-34, with its sturdy design and combat effectiveness, was crucial for the Soviet defense, helping to turn the tide of the war in Eastern Europe. On July 23, 1943, during the Allied campaign in Sicily, Italy, the British Army captured a notable example of German military innovation: the Kettenkrad, a tracked motorcycle. This unique vehicle, initially designed for airborne and mountain troop operations due to its mobility and difficult terrain, became a versatile tool for the German Army. The image of British paratrooper veterans alongside their photographs from when they were younger, captured before they jumped over Europe on June 5, 1944, evokes a powerful narrative of courage and sacrifice. This jump preceded D-Day, the largest seaborne invasion in history, which took place on June 6, 1944, as part of Operation Overlord. These young soldiers were part of the airborne forces tasked with crucial missions: securing bridges, destroying German defenses, and capturing strategic points to facilitate the Allied advance in Normandy, France. The photo of a boy, Warren Bernard, reaching out to his father on 8th Street in New Westminster, Canada, as he marched off to serve in World War II, is a powerful portrait of human emotions in times of conflict. This image captures the moment of separation between a father and his son, symbolizing the painful goodbyes experienced by families worldwide during the war. The story has a happy ending, as the soldier survived the conflict, and the reunion with his son was also documented, serving as a reminder of the hope and joy that followed the end of the war. A powerful and poignant moment in history, captured on April 14, 1945, when a survivor of one of the largest concentration camps in Germany identifies one of the guards responsible for brutally beating him during his captivity. The context of this image reflects the complexity of post-war justice and the process of recognition and accountability for war crimes. The liberation of the concentration camps by the Allies exposed to the world the extent of the horrors committed and initiated a period of trials and reckonings. The narrative of a Russian World War II veteran reuniting with the tank he served in throughout the conflict is profoundly touching. Transformed into a monument in a small Russian town, the tank serves as a lasting physical reminder of the experiences endured by the veteran and his comrades. This reunion is not only a personal connection to a past marked by struggle and survival, but also a living tribute to history and the sacrifices made in the name of freedom and victory over oppression. The tank, now immobile and silent, tells stories of battles fought, camaraderie, and a time when it was an active war machine, serving now as a symbol of peace, memory, and respect for the generation that fought in the greatest conflagration of the 20th century. A soldier firing at German positions on Pius X Street using a grenade launcher evokes a vivid image of resistance and struggle during armed confrontation. This act of combat, taking place in a specific urban space, suggests an intense phase of conflict where opposing forces utilize not only strategy and conventional weaponry, but also the geography of cities to gain advantage. Operation Overlord, launched on June 6, 1944, marked the beginning of the Allied invasion of Nazi-occupied Normandy, France, known as D-Day. Omaha Beach was one of the 5 designated landing beaches, facing the strongest German defenses and resulting in heavy casualties for the Allied forces. Soldiers, mainly Americans, had to overcome anti-landing obstacles, intense machine gun, and artillery fire in difficult terrain to establish a foothold. Despite the challenges, the capture of Omaha was crucial, allowing the linking of American and British beaches and paving the way for the liberation of France and the advance into Germany. After World War II, many nations faced the challenge of dealing with surplus military equipment. Thousands of military vehicles, aircraft, ships, and other pieces of equipment that had been mass-produced for the war effort suddenly became surplus as demand drastically decreased with the end of the conflict. As a result, vast cemeteries of surplus vehicles and equipment emerged. These sites, often located in remote areas or on decommissioned military bases, contained rows upon rows of tanks, jeeps, planes, and ships, all awaiting a final fate. Some of these items were later recycled, dismantled to recover metals and other valuable materials. Others were sold to developing countries, repurposed for civilian purposes, or kept in reserve for future use. When Neville Chamberlain, then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, embarked on a journey to meet Adolf Hitler in an attempt to negotiate peace before the onset of World War II, he was greeted by a Nazi honor guard. This encounter is part of the appeasement efforts undertaken by Chamberlain in hopes of averting the looming conflict in Europe. The meetings, which took place in 1938, culminated in the Munich Agreement, where Chamberlain believed he had secured peace in our time by agreeing to the Nazis' annexation of the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia in exchange for Hitler's promise not to make further territorial demands. The women snipers of the 3rd Soviet Shock Army, operating in Germany in 1945, represent a crucial and often underestimated aspect of women's contribution to World War II. The most famous among them is Lyudmila Pavlichenko, nicknamed Lady Death, who is credited with 309 confirmed kills, making her the most successful female sniper in history. William Patrick Hitler is a peculiar historical figure, mainly due to his direct familial relationship with Adolf Hitler. Born in Liverpool, United Kingdom, in 1911, William was the son of Alois Hitler Jr., who was Adolf Hitler's half-brother. The pursuit of personal advantage led William to move to Germany in hopes of benefiting from his connection to the Führer. However, relations between him and his famous uncle were tense and complicated. Dissatisfied with his treatment in Germany and fearing for his safety as Hitler's power grew, William returned to the UK, where he attempted to capitalize on his infamous lineage by writing articles and giving lectures. With the onset of World War II, he moved to the United States, continuing his efforts to distance himself from and criticize his uncle's regime, even enlisting in the U.S. Navy and serving during the war. After the conflict, William Patrick Hitler changed his surname and lived a relatively obscure life in the United States, passing away in 1987. Known as the father of the atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer is a central figure in the history of 20th century science and technology, best known for his role as the scientific director of the Manhattan Project, the U.S. program that developed the first nuclear weapons during World War II. His leadership in the project culminated in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, events that led to the end of World War II but also marked the beginning of the nuclear age and the Cold War. In May 1945, as World War II drew to a close in Europe, M4 Sherman tanks were a common sight among Allied forces, including in Austria. Known for their reliability, mass production, and versatility, the Sherman could be equipped with different types of armament and armor, making it adaptable to various combat situations. When Japan surrendered and U.S. occupation forces entered the country, a large number of Japanese cultural artifacts, including samurai swords, were seized. These swords, some of which had centuries of history and were considered national treasures, were often taken as war trophies by American soldiers. The Schwerer Gustav was one of the largest artillery pieces ever built, designed and manufactured by Nazi Germany during World War II. This immense railway gun with a caliber of 800 mm was developed to penetrate the thickest fortifications. Weighing approximately 350 tons and capable of firing projectiles weighing up to 7 tons at a distance of over 30 kilometers, the Schwerer Gustav symbolizes the extremes of weapons engineering of the era. It was particularly notable during the siege of Sevastopol in Crimea in 1942, where its destructive capability was demonstrated by piercing deep fortifications and underground tunnels. This is the Tiger II, also known as Königstiger or King Tiger. It was the most powerful and heavily armored tank operated by the Germans during the war. Equipped with an extremely potent 88mm cannon and armor nearly impenetrable by the standards of the time, the Tiger II commanded respect on the battlefield, facing any Allied tank with technical superiority. In August 1944, during the Warsaw Uprising, one of the most significant displays of resistance against the German occupation in World War II, a photograph captured by Tadeusz Bukowski shows a Polish barricade erected in Napoleon Square. This barricade was constructed around a German tank destroyer, Jagdpanzer 38T, known as Hetzer, which had been captured by the Polish Home Army. In June 1944, shortly after D-Day and the Allied invasion of Normandy, a camouflaged German heavy tank, Tiger the Fern, played a notable role in the Battle of Villers-Bocage, France. The Tiger the tanks were among the most feared tanks of the Wehrmacht, known for their exceptionally thick armor and powerful 88mm cannon, capable of destroying any Allied tank at considerable distances. During August 1939, shortly before the start of World War II, a Polish battalion was maneuvering with a Bofors 37mm Deguzedra 36 anti-tank gun, also known as Panzerabwehrkanone. This anti-tank gun was a crucial artillery piece for Polish defenses against the imminent invasion by Nazi Germany. The WZ-36 was a medium-caliber anti-tank gun developed by Sweden and adopted by the Polish Army due to its effectiveness against German tanks, especially the lighter models. The Operation Oboe II was a significant Allied operation in World War II, which took place in Balikpapan, Borneo, in July 1945. The first assault wave, comprised of units from the 7th Australian Division, landed east of the Clandestin district, aiming to capture the oil port. This operation was part of a series of campaigns to dislodge Japanese forces and secure strategic resources in the Pacific. The success of the landing contributed to weakening Japanese control in the region and was a crucial step towards the end of the war in the Pacific theater. Founded in 1939 in Nazi Germany, Ravensbrück was a concentration camp designed exclusively for women. During its operation until 1945, it is estimated that over 130,000 women of various nationalities passed through its gates. Many of them did not survive due to the terrible conditions, forced labor, and brutality of the guards. Auschwitz, the largest of the Nazi concentration and extermination camps, became a symbol of the horror of the Holocaust. A touching photo shows children, survivors of Auschwitz, shortly after liberation. Their faces, marked by the ordeal, look into the camera with a mix of fear and confusion. The photograph of the Soviet flag being raised over the Reichstag in Berlin is one of the most iconic images of World War II. Captured on May 2, 1945, it symbolizes the victory of the Soviet Union over Nazi Germany and the end of the war in Europe. The depicted moment follows intense fighting in the Battle of Berlin, marking the definitive fall of the Third Reich. The bombing of Dresden was a series of air raids carried out by Allied forces, mainly the Royal Air Force, RAF, and the United States Army Air Forces, USAAF, between February 13 and 15, 1945, on the German city of Dresden. This attack is one of the most controversial of World War II due to the high number of civilian casualties and the massive destruction of a city known for its cultural and historical value, with little strategic military significance towards the end of the war. The bombings unleashed a large quantity of explosives and incendiary bombs, resulting in a vast fire that destroyed much of the city center. It is estimated that between 25,000 and 40,000 people lost their lives in the attacks, many of whom were civilians and refugees fleeing the Soviet advance from the east. The justification for the bombing was to undermine German morale and contribute to the Allied war effort, hastening the end of the conflict. On May 11, 1945, during the Battle of Okinawa in World War II, the aircraft carrier USS Bunker Hill was hit by 2 Japanese kamikaze attacks in quick succession. These attacks resulted in severe damage to the ship, causing a major fire that killed 346 crew members, injured 264, and left 43 missing. The kamikazes, part of a desperate tactic by Japan to inflict maximum damage on American forces, demonstrated the intensity and brutality of the final phase of the war in the Pacific. Despite the catastrophic damage and heavy loss of life, the USS Bunker Hill survived. The attack on Pearl Harbor, which occurred on the morning of December 7, 1941, was a surprise attack conducted by the Imperial Japanese Navy against the United States naval base located in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. One of the most devastating moments of this attack was the destruction of the USS Arizona, BB-39, a battleship of the U.S. Navy. A Japanese bomb struck the Arizona, piercing its armored deck and igniting the ship's powder magazine. The resulting explosion was catastrophic, sinking the battleship in a matter of minutes and killing 1,177 of the 1,512 crew members aboard, representing about half of the total deaths at Pearl Harbor that day. The USS Arizona still lies at the bottom of the harbor, and its wreckage has been transformed into a memorial to honor all those who lost their lives in the attack. During World War II, pilots of the United States Army Air Forces, USAAF, specifically those of the 357th Fighter Group, played a crucial role in aerial operations, including support for D-Day, the Allied invasion of Normandy on June 6, 1944. This group, operating P-51 Mustang fighters, was noted for its effectiveness in long-range escort missions and air attacks against enemy targets in occupied Europe.
During World War II, Japanese prisoners of war were captured by American forces. These prisoners were subjected to inhumane treatments, such as being stripped naked and forced to bathe in public, a practice that violates international conventions on the treatment of prisoners of war. Such acts occurred in the context of intense hostilities between the United States and Japan, marked by brutal combat in the Pacific from 1941 to 1945. This event reflects the serious human rights violations that can occur in times of war and highlights the importance of respecting international laws of conflict.